Hello, I am Brian Foster. Today I'm talking about Spiritism, and we are bringing to you more excerpts from the Spiritist Review of 1858. This is a the book, the Spiritist Review 1858, is a compilation of the 12 monthly magazines that Allan Kardec personally edited and contributed to. Before I begin, let us have a prayer. Dear Jesus, please lead us and inspire us to be united in our battle for spiritual maturity and in our fight with the forces that want to keep us immature and ignorant and have us exercise our primitive emotions instead of becoming more calm, charitable, fraternal, and honest and loving under the banner of you, our Father, Jesus Christ. Amen. So tonight is just all more interesting information. Now, I don't go over every little uh, article or in the Spirits Review. A lot of it is probably not pertinent. A lot of it's not timely anymore. But I do try to pick out. I try to cherry pick what I think is interesting to the people here listening to this show. So, if you're interested in Spiritism, let me recommend that you read the Spirit's book. And I cannot recommend this enough. It's what Allan Kardec created in the codified in 1850s, and he's also done some other books: the Book of Mediums, the Gospel According to Spiritism, Heaven and Hell, and Genesis. All five are available in PDF, and you can get them if you just put in Allan Kardec space PDF in your whatever search engine you wish. Of course, you can also get my book, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation, and you can get that on my site, nwspiritism.com. And that's again free on PDF. You can also, of course, if you like, is you can download it. Besides downloading PDF in English or French for free, you can get it in Kindle, in Audible, or in paperback. It's about 100 pages book, so it's a good introduction to Spiritism 101. Again, go to my blog site, nwspiritism.com. Now, let's start what we're going to go through. Yeah, like this. I see people on already. Hello, everyone. Okay, this is a warning from beyond the grave. The following fact was reported by the Patrie on August 15th, 1858. Last Tuesday, I started to tell you, maybe too recklessly, a heartbreaking story. I should have thought that there's no touching story. There's only well-told stories, and the same fact described by different persons may cause the audience either to fall asleep or give them the shivers of fear. As I entertained myself with a fellow traveler on a trip from Cherbourg to Paris, Mr. B told me a marvelous tale that if I had annotated, it would have allowed me the opportunity to give you a thrill of excitement. However, I made the mistake of trusting my terrible memory that I profoundly regret. We've all done that. Nevertheless, here is the adventure that proves today, August 15th, that it is really a fact. Mrs. S, historical name that even these days is surrounded by consideration, Mr. S, was an officer during the Directory. On business or pleasure, he used to travel to Italy. Now, the Directory was after the French Revolution, Robespierre, and then Robespierre was, of course, then also killed by guillotine. The Directory tried to come in and even things out in the French Revolution and try to get a little back to normal. This was before Napoleon crowned himself emperor. So that's what he means. He was an officer during the Directory that time. On business or pleasure, he used to travel to Italy. In one of our central departments, he was caught by surprise by the sudden shadows of the night, feeling happy for having found shelter in a kind of suspicious cabin where he was offered an ordinary supper and a makeshift bed in the barn. He was used to adventures and the tough duties of war, hence he ate until full, then went to bed, falling deeply asleep without a murmur. During the night, a terrible apparition perturbed his sleep. He saw a form rising from the shadows, heavily marching toward his bed, stopping by his head. It was a man in his 50s whose uneasy gray hair was blemished by blood. His chest was naked, and his wrinkled throat was cut open, still showing the wounds. He paused for a moment, staring at the sleepy traveler with his deep black eyes. Then the pale figure got animated. His pupils became shiny bright like two pieces of lit charcoal. He seemed to make a huge effort with a trembling and muffled voice. He pronounced these strange words. I know you. You are a soldier, and like me, a man of courage and incapable of faulting with his word. I come to ask you for a service that others have promised but did not deliver. I have been dead for 3 weeks. The owner of this house, helped by his wife, surprised me in my sleep and slit my throat. My corpse is hidden under a pile of compost to the right at the end of the chicken pen. Tomorrow, go and seek the local authorities. Bring 2 policemen to bury me. The owner of the house and his wife will betray each other, and you'll deliver them to justice. Goodbye. I count on your pity. Do not forget the request of an old brother in arms. So awakening, Mr. S remembered his dream. He rested his head on the elbows while meditating. His emotion was obvious, but disappeared at sunrise. And like Attila, he said, a dream. Should I be worried about a dream? He betrayed his heart's message, listening only to the voice of reason. He packed and left. Then came the afternoon, when he completed another stretch of his journey, stopping over in a boarding house to spend the night. He had just closed his eyes when the shadow appeared a second time, to him, sad and almost intimidating. I am impressed and afflicted, said the ghost, by seeing a man like you to perjure and fail with your duties. I expected more loyalty from you. My body lies unburied. My murderers live in peace. Friend, my vengeance is in your hand. In the name of honor, I demand that you return at once. Mr. S spent the rest of the night under great agitation. At dawn, he felt ashamed for his fear, but continued his journey. In the afternoon, he came to a third stop and a third apparition. This time, the ghost was livid and terrifying. He held a bitter smile on his white lips. He spoke with a rude voice. It seems I have misjudged you, that your heart, like the others, is insensitive to the claims of the unfortunate ones. For the last time, I come to invoke your help and appeal to your generosity. Go back to X and revenge me, or otherwise may you be cursed. Mr. S did not hesitate this time. He turned back on his feet, traveling to the suspicious hostel where he spent the first of those lugubrious nights. He went to the judge's house and requested the escort of 2 policemen. Just as they saw the police, the guest murderers became pale and confessed to the crime, as if a superior force had forcefully driven them to the fatal confession. The legal process was prepared swiftly, and the culprits were given the death penalty. As for the poor policeman whose cadaver was found under a pile of manure to the right at the end of the chicken pen, he was buried in sacred grounds, having the priest prayed for the peace of his soul. Mission accomplished. Mr. S was quick to leave the region toward the Alps, never looking back. The first time he stopped to rest in the bed, the ghost showed up once again, no longer showing ferocious and irritated eyes, but sweet and benevolent, saying, Thank you, my brother. I wish to thank you for your service to me. You will see me again only once. I will come to warn you 2 hours before your death. Goodbye. Now, these things have, I believe this story, these things have happened. Mr. S was then about 30 years old. For another 30 years, not a single vision came to disrupt his peaceful life. But on August 14th, 1820-something, on the eve of Napoleon's celebrations, and still faithful to Napoleon's party, he had gathered about 20 old soldiers of the empire over dinner. The gathering was very enjoyable and happy, and the host, although old, was healthy and strong. They were having coffee in the living room. Mr. Els felt like smoking his pipe, and remembered that he had left tobacco in his bedroom. Since he was used to prepare it himself, he left the guests momentarily and went up to the first floor where his bedroom was located. He had not taken any light with him. And of course, in most of the world, when they say the first floor, in the United States, we think of the second floor. Once he got to the large hall that led to the room, he had to suddenly stop and reach for the wall. The ghost of the murdered man stood across the corridor from him at the other end. The ghost did not say a word, not even a gesture, disappearing after a few moments. It was the promised warning. Mr. S was a man of strong character. After that brief and fainting moment, recovered his courage and cold blood to proceed to his room, grabbed the box of snuff, and returned to the living room. He mingled with others, joining the conversation, showing his joviality and customary sense of humor. At midnight, his guests left. He then sat down and spent about three-quarters of an hour meditating. Then, feeling good and having organized his business, he retired to his room to go to bed. When he opened the door, a gunshot knocked him dead, exactly 2 hours after the operation of the ghost. The bullet that shattered his skull was addressed to this servant. The author of the article wished to keep his promise to the newspaper about telling something touching at any price, resorting to a story that reports with great imagination. Or is the story true? We can real or fictitious. The essential here is to know is if the fact is at all possible. Then let us not hesitate and say yes. The warnings from beyond the grave are possible. The numerous examples attesting them are out there, whose authenticity could not be mistrusted. If the anecdote of Mr. Henry Diogenes, I'm saying his name wrong, I'm sure, is then apocryphal, then there are plenty of the same kind that are not, and we can even say that this one has nothing of extraordinary. The apparition would have happened in his dream, which is very common. However, it is notorious that they can also visually happen in the waking state. The warning at the instant of death is not uncommon, but the facts of that kind are very rare, as the providence wisdom hides the fatal moment from us. Thus, it is only exceptionally that it's revealed to us and for unknown reasons. Yeah, and in that instance, the policeman who were killed by the couple, must have gotten permission, because usually to tell us the future or important future, you have to have permission from higher spirits. So this guy probably had gotten permission. And I don't know if the policeman was still on the lower zone when he told him this, and he made it his own personal thing, and he kept kind of in touch with this wonderful soldier, and therefore helped him, because he, as a spirit, even if he was a lower spirit, he could see somewhat into the future. The higher the spirit you are, the further you can see into a person's future. So a very high spirit like Jesus Christ can see far off into the future. But for the lower spirits, a very low time. What that time is, I do not know. The following is an example of a more recent, less dramatic, analogous case, but whose accuracy we can ensure. Mr. Watbled, who was a businessman and president of the Boulogne Chamber of Commerce, died on July 12th last year. Under the following circumstances, his wife had died 12 years earlier, and her death had brought him permanent sorrow. She appeared to him over 2 consecutive nights in the beginning of July and told him, "God have mercy on our souls and wants us to unite soon." She added that the encounter was scheduled for next July 12th, and as a consequence, he should get ready. In fact, since he went through a remarkable change, he progressively atrophied. He soon prostrated without any suffering, exhaling his final breath on the very scheduled day in his friend's arms. The fact is not contestable in itself. The skeptical may only discuss the cause, which they will certainly attribute to the imagination. It is well known that similar predictions made by fortune tellers have had not infrequently a fatal ending. In such a case, it is understandable that the organs having the imagination excited by that idea experience a radical alteration. More than once, the fear of death has caused death, but here the circumstances are different. Those who deeply studied the Spiritist phenomenon will realize the fact. As for the skeptical, they have one argument: I do not believe, hence this is not possible. Once questioned about this, the Spiritist said, God chose that well-known man so the events would be noticed and provided food for thought. The incredulous essentially ask for proofs. God gives them every time through phenomena that's found everywhere. Nevertheless, there are the words that apply to them: have eyes but do not see, have ears that do not hear. And that's of course, there's the universal outcry, like, and I get that all the time, is why doesn't God come down and reveal himself so we all know? And the answer is, well, he has. And over again, if you just choose to see it. But if you do not choose to see it, then you will not. And of course, God's not going to give us, the God and Jesus Christ and the spirits are not going to give us the answers to the test. We have to figure out the answers to the questions. The questions: why are we here? Why should I be a better person? Why should I be nice to other people? Why can't I just be a selfish, you know what, and just have pleasure and do whatever I want? And those are things we need to answer. And, of course, the answer is that we're here on earth as a campus to go through trials and tribulations to teach us why we should improve ourselves, why we should rip out the primitive emotions and replace them with advanced, civilized emotions of love, honesty, fraternity, charity, and service to our fellow human being. So, but it's always interesting. And the other thing I always say, if Jesus came down and said, here I am, Jesus, here's a couple of miracles, and there is reincarnation and there is karma, so watch what you do, please, and then left, who would bet that after 3 months, 6 months, could be less, he would say, well, that was probably a mass, vision, that hallucination, that didn't really take place. I'm just going to go back the way I was. And the reason is that the spirit world doesn't want us to be that criminal who's afraid to commit the act because we will be caught and punished. That's not good enough, because after all, why are we doing this? Because in the spirit world, thought is action. They want us to really modify to the bottom of our heart, the foundation of our character, and to know that following our conscience and doing good is what we really wish to do and want to do. And it would be hard for us to violate that precept. That's what they want. They don't want someone who does good just because you have to. It's because you want to. And by going down and telling everybody, yes, there's all this stuff, and you're going to regret it if you're not a better person, those people would just appear to be better, but not inside. And in the spirit world, you are what you are outside is what you are inside, whereas the physical world you cannot see. But in the spirit world, it's all out in the open. And of course, the law of affinity, when you pass over, you go to the level that you should be. Okay, let's do the next one. Family conversations from beyond the grave. Mrs. Schwabenhaus, probably pronounced that wrong, ecstatic lethargy. According to the Courier de Estas Unas, several newspapers have reported the following fact that seemed to provide interesting material for study. So the newspaper says, a German family from Baltimore, USA, has just been taken by a great emotion due to a case of an apparent death. Mrs. Schwabenhaus, who was ill for a long time, had exhaled what seemed to have been her last breath overnight from Monday to Tuesday. The persons who attended her observed every indication of death. The body went cold and the limbs rigid. The undertakers retired to their rooms after having given the corpse the final care, when everything in the mortuary chamber was ready for the funerals. Exhausted, Mr. Schwabenhaus soon followed them. Deep in his agitated sleep, he was surprised by his wife's voice around 6 a.m. In the beginning, he thought it was a dream, but once he heard his name several times, he could not doubt it any longer. He dashed into his wife's room, and the person who was left for dead was sitting on the bed, apparently healthy and stronger than ever before. Mrs. Schwabenhaus asked for water, and later she wished to drink tea and wine. Then she asked her husband to take care of the children that was crying in the adjacent room, but he was too excited for that, running to call the others from around the house. The sick lady received friends and servants with a smile. All approached her bed hesitantly. She did not seem surprised with all the mortuary apparatus that hurt her eyes. I know you thought I was dead, she said. However, I was only asleep. During that period, my soul was transported to celestial regions. An angel came to pick me up, and in a few moments we crossed the space. The guiding angel was my little daughter that we lost last year. Oh, soon I will reunite with her. Now that I've enjoyed the happiness of heavens, I no longer wish to stay here. I asked the angel to allow me to come once more to kiss my husband and my children, but soon she will come to pick me up. Now this is in actuality a recounting of a NDE, a near-death experience in the 1850s. And there's good and bad things about the internet, but the great thing about the internet is that a lot of people from all countries and cultures, religions, to state and write and discuss their near-death experiences. And in their near-death experiences, there are many themes that come out over and over again. One of them says they come up into heaven. They have like life reviews. They learn about reincarnation. They learn about karma. They talk to their past family and friends that have passed away, but now are in great shape in the spirit world. And you can see this. I mean, so when people who do not believe in the spirit world says, well, all these people have just the same mass hallucination in their imagination. Well, there's a lot of things, and also there's many, like her. She says, okay, soon I'll reunite with her. So she says, okay, I'm coming back soon. And there's many people with NDEs, near-death experiences, that have been told parts of the future that have come true. I have talked to some of them. I've heard some of them speak. And these are pretty specific things. And of course, this is why I found, I discovered for myself, not that I discovered Spiritism, because my wife had an NDE that had specific occurrences in the future. This is like, I don't know, 10, 15 years before we ever met. And she knew she was going to get married, but it sure took a long time. And then she forgot all that because it took so long. But then after we got married, she started remembering these things. And then she told me something so specific that was going to happen. And before that, she always said, oh, yeah, I remember that from my ND, always after the fact. So I never took notice of it. But a couple of things she knew beforehand. But this one was just so right on. And there was no way I think she was like 17 when this happened. There's no way some 17-year-old girl could have the the sophistication to tell me what what was going to happen to me. And of course it happened, and that was like, okay, if someone can tell me the future over a year ahead of the time, right? About a year, right? It happened a year later when she told me this is going to happen. And it happened exactly. The whole thing, it started to happen before a year, then it did happen about another 3 or 4 months. The end part happened. Exactly what's going to happen. I would have. It's okay. This means that there's something up there. This is a sign from Jesus and God, right? This is a sign that says, okay, Brian, you're been comfortable in your own little physical life, thinking that you kind of believe in God, but you thought you're far away. No. You're on a track that you don't even know you're on. And that's okay. If this can be done, then there's something up there that is so superior to us that I got to figure this out. And that's how I found Spiritism. And it is just so fascinating, because once you understand Spiritism, and of course, as I said before, Spiritism is the third revelation. The first is Moses, the second is Jesus Christ, and the third is the Spirit's book, organized by the Spirit of Truth, as promised to us in the New Testament by Jesus. I'll send you the Spirit of Truth, the Consoler, depending on the translation. And the Spirit of Truth did. He organized all these spirits, talked to different mediums, and in answers to the 1,019 questions that Allan Kardec codified, and told us about reincarnation, how spirits, how we go through trials and tribulations, all this stuff. And they're telling us more. Leon Denis, Chico Xavier, Divaldo Franco, Yvonne Pierre, Reverend G. Val Owen tells us more and more from spirits. And this is, once you get into Spiritism, these things like, oh yeah, interesting, this woman was okay. They let her come back and let her kiss her husband and her children. Let's see what happens next. So yeah, these things happen. At 8 o'clock, after kindly having said goodbye to her husband, children, and several other people who surrounded her, Miss Straubenhaus definitely died, as attested by the doctors, without a somber of a doubt. This fact caused vivid commotion in Baltimore's population. The spirit of Mrs. Zubbenhaus sustained the following conversation when evoked in one session of the Parisian Society of Spiritist Studies on April 27th last. We want to frame a few questions with respect to your death, aiming at our own instruction. And the answer is, how could I not answer you now that I know the eternal truth and know about your needs? Second question, do you remember the particular conditions that preceded your death? Yes, that was the happiest moment of my earthly existence. During your apparent death, did you hear what happened around you and saw the burial apparatus? My soul was much concerned with forthcoming happiness. So, probably not, because she was focusing on something else. Here's the observation. It is known that the lethargic, meaning the people who are in coma, probably that's the word they used back then, generally see and hear what happens around them and keep its memory alive when awakened. The reported fact offers the peculiarity of lethargic sleep accompanied by ecstasy, which explains the deviation in the patient's attention. Were you aware that you were not dead? Yes, but that was painful for me. Can you tell the difference between the natural sleep and the lethargic one? The natural sleep is the appeasement of the body. The lethargic is the exaltation of the soul. Have you suffered during lethargy? No. How did your return to life happen? God allowed my return to comfort the afflicted hearts around me. Now, this is interesting too, because this is something that I've read in spiritual literature over and over again, is that many times when people are dying and people are surrounding their bed, and these people just have this deep longing to keep that person alive. And yet the date for the person to go is that date, right? The person is ready to go. And yet this shows you the power of thoughts. Even in the physical world, the power of thought keeps that body, keeps that paraspirit tied to that physical body. So many times the spirits will make that person kind of like get up in bed and go, oh, I feel better. And all the people around them go, oh, this is a perfect shape. This is a perfect time for me to go get some sleep or go get some food. And I'll be back in a couple hours. And they'll say, fine, come back in a couple hours. And then when they come back, the person's dead. And the spirit world does that in order for you to get your mind off that tying that person who's ready to go, tying that person to earth because you're materialistic, in that case, and I understand. And you're keeping that body there. Thoughts have action and have consequences in the spirit world. And our thoughts go from the physical to the spirit world. So they kind of fake the person being better. And then those people around them relax, and then they loosen them up, cut the paraspiritual cord, and off they go. So that's why when people die, don't be regretful. Don't say, oh, I wish you were still alive, or I wish you were with me, or my life is terrible without you. Any of that. Tell them in your prayers and in your mind that, oh, I'm happy you're in a better world. Have fun. Learn a lot. I'll be fine here. I'll be with you pretty soon, because your life doesn't last forever. And think positive for them. And say, don't, and then tell your other friends, don't keep telling them regret. Just pray for them and say, thanks for everything you did for me. And, you learn a lot, and prepare the way for me, or whatever you'd like to say positive. So that's how people should act around funerals and when people die and all that. It's a much more positive thing. And spirits tell us, look, Leon Denis said, being born is a lot more painful than dying. When you're dying, you're taken out of your body, and if you lived a decent life, then you don't have to live a perfect life, and you're taken to a nice place to recover. And the nice thing about dying is you don't have this heavy diving suit around you. You don't have to plunder around and plod along this heavy gravity called Earth and eat a lot of food just to walk and breathe. You're never ill. You never die. You don't grow old. When you get back to the spirit world, well, you look as you want to look. So let me carry on. We wish a more material explanation. What you call a paraspirit still animated my terrestrial covering. So this is when she went to a place in heaven, probably being led by the little girl that passed away just a while. Is your perispirit always goes? If you're not dead, your perispirit is connected to your physical body, and of course it will go unlimited amount of distance with you. And of course, the silver cord was also mentioned in the Bible. And of course, it's mentioned by people with NDEs. I look back and go, oh, there's that cord behind me. That's the perispirit cord that keeps you attached to your body. If once that cut, then your body has the message like, oh, okay, I can start decomposing. And that's what they say. Spirits say is when that is cut, when your perispirit has completely left your body, then your cells know, okay, I'm not controlled by the spirit world, by this anymore. I can start decomposing, and that's when decomposing starts. Okay, number 9. How come you're not surprised when you woke up with all the arrangements that was going on for your funeral? And the answer is, I knew I was going to die. I couldn't care less about all that because I had to glance at the happiness of the elected ones. Returning to your alertness, were you happy to return to life? Yes, to console. Where have you been during your lethargic sleep, your coma? I cannot describe my state of happiness. Human language cannot express these things. Do you still feel on Earth or in space? In the spaces. She's ethereal. 13. When you came back to yourself, you said that the daughter you lost in the previous years came back to take you. Is that true? Yes, she is a pure spirit. Oh, that's so nice. Observation. From the answers of this mother, everything indicates that she is an elevated spirit. No surprise that an even more elevated spirit was united to hers out of sympathy. However, we should not take literally the expression pure spirit that the spirits sometimes attribute to each other. It is a fact that refers to a more elevated order, hence those that are completely dematerialized and depurated are no longer subjected to the reincarnation. These are angels that enjoy eternal life, while those who have not yet achieved a sufficient level do not understand that supreme state. They can then employ the expression pure spirit to designate a relative superiority. We have numerous examples of that. Mrs. Schweibenhaus seems to be in that category. The spirits of mockery sometimes also attribute the quality of pure spirits to themselves in order to inspire more confidence in those who they wish to trick, and they do not have sufficient perspicacity to judge their language, so would they always betray their inferiority. And of course, this again is great advice. And if you're interested in mediumship or conversing with the spirits, don't do anything. Read the medium's book first, because Allan Kardec will say a spirit will always reveal themselves eventually in their conversations. And just as they said, and I understand why many religions say, no, don't talk to spirits. You can talk to demons, etc. Although there are no demons, they're just primitive humans or ignorant humans. But yes, it can happen. It could be dangerous to you because you could start believing the things they say, even they approach you as like, I'm this wonderful person. Well, no, they're not. But that's why in Spiritist centers, you go through a year or longer of training to be a medium, because you have to be able to spot these type of situations. And so if you're just a regular person, and I've seen that a lot from spiritualists who, I'm channeling the spirit, and the spirit knows everything. And I know this one medium said, when she talked to this other medium, she goes, well, do you know who this person you're talking to is? And they just get mad because they think, oh, if they're talking to a spirit, it has to be this all-knowledgeable, all-seeing being. Well, no. Spirit doesn't tell us we are who we were when we pass over. If we were kind of mediocre intelligence and we kind of thought strange things, well, we are the same. And a lot of these spirits like to come and talk to the mediums and kind of pontificate, but even though they do not know exactly what they're talking about. Happens quite often. Okay. Question 14. How old was that child when she died? 7 years old. How did you recognize her? The superior spirits recognize each other more promptly. Did you recognize her under any form? I only saw her as a spirit. What did she tell you? Come and follow me to the eternal. Did you see other spirits beyond that of your daughter? I saw many others, but my daughter's voice and the happiness which I had a glance at were my only concerns. Once you returned to life, you said that you would soon reunite with your daughter. You were then aware of your near death. It was a happy expectation, she answered. How did you know? Who doesn't know that one has to die? The illness told me that. What was the cause of your illness? The displeasures. Don't know what she means by that. How old were you? 48 years old. When you definitely left life, did you immediately have clear and lucid consciousness of your new condition? I had it during the coma. Question 24. Did you experience the perturbation that generally follows a return to the spiritual world? No, I was amazed but not perturbed. Observation. It is well known that perturbation that follows death is lower and shorter the more elevated the spirit is. The ecstasy that precedes Lady Death was, by the way, the first detachment of her soul from the early earthly bonds. So, yes. And so for people who don't quite know what's going on, they are very confused. They could be taken to like a little sanitarium, a little hospital in the lower zone, in an outpost, or a hospital in one of the first levels of heaven, and allow themselves time to compose themselves, understand what they went through, think about what they went through, all that. In fact, there's this marvelous story by the spirit that died. He was a cobbler. He was back in, I don't know what year in England, but before the automobile. And he made shoes for very poor people, and he died. And he was taken to this lower level of heaven, and he was given this house that says, here's a house for you. And he was so happy to be in that house. He was a very simple cobbler. And I think, and this will show you what happens to people who are very sophisticated in heaven, but then wanted to live a much easier life. So he was in his house one day, and then a spirit came and knocked on the door and says, hello. He goes, how are you? He goes, oh, I'm doing fine. They gave me this wonderful house. Couldn't be better. And he said, well, are you keeping busy? He goes, yeah, I read. And the spirit that came to him and says, have you read this book? He goes, yeah, I read that book, but I don't think it has much to do with this level. He goes, well, why is that? Well, this level are still people that believe in their native religion or their native culture is are those type of things. So it's not made for people, on this level, because it's probably a higher level where people understand that that people all come together and to love everyone. And he goes, well, who are? Well, do you know who wrote this book? He goes, no, I don't. Well, turn it over. And he looked it over, and he had not seen that before. It probably just appeared. He says, it was the guy. He said, well, it says I wrote it. He goes, yes, you did. He goes, no. He goes, no, yep, you did. And we want to take you up to the higher levels of heaven. He goes, no. I can't go to the higher levels of heaven. I'm just a simple cobbler. I don't know anything. He goes, look, just from that answer, you should be at a higher level of heaven. And we know from your life that when you made shoes for the poor people in your village, your biggest worry was that they would last as long as possible, because those people had no money. So yes, you need to go to a higher level of heaven. And therefore, and he says, walk with me. And he started walking with him. And as he was walking, he started getting back his memories that said what he was, right? And this is how the spirit world works. They'll send you to Earth, and they'll go, you're kind of too smart last time. We'll kind of ratchet that down. Or we'll put you in something simple that you can concentrate on your emotions and your character, not your intellectual ability. But all of that will come back to you as at the right time when you go to Earth, go to heaven, I should say. Let me see. I had a comment here. He says, but the transition of going from life to death is very painful. The shutting down of the organs, the heart, labored breathing, the death anxiety is all too painful. These are the death thrills, not fun at all. Yes, I'm sure that does happen to many people. But what Leon Denis was saying, it was generally true. So yes, there are always exceptions that people who go through the death throes, and it's for a purpose. It's for them to think about it, and the spirits have said that don't underestimate the last 30 seconds or however many seconds of a person's life, because they can learn a lot from those last few seconds of life. And that's why you should never artificially end a life. Is let them go through those death throes, because they will think of things and they will experience things that you have no idea what they're experiencing, and that will do them well when they're in heaven and they start going up. So yes, that's a great point. Okay, let me carry on. Question 25. After death, have you seen your daughter again? He says, I am frequently with her. Are you bonded to her for a whole eternity? And the answer is no. I know that after my last incarnations, I will be in the dwelling inhabited by the pure spirits. So she's probably was going to go up a level or on some other planet. And if she is now a pure spirit, although they say she's probably not really a pure spirit, but she's probably in a higher level, they don't have to reincarnate again because there's nothing to fix. But many do and come to Earth on a mission to help, as an example, could be other planets, to help us elevate ourselves as a collective human race. And in fact, there's been many throughout history, and actually a lot more lately, starting in the year 2000, end of the 90s and the year 2000, there's been many spirits coming from higher planets to higher heavens around higher planets to come and help us improve ourselves, because the Earth is now starting a transition from a planet of atonement where we pay for our past wrongs, we live in this chaos for good reason, to a planet of regeneration where we won't be surrounded by inferior spirits. We won't see the injustice and inequality that life has. Now, this is not going to be like a snap. This will take, who knows, 100 years, 1,000 years, but it's going to be on the trend line. Then your trials are not over. Because no, but there'll be happy ones. I can only wait and hope. This is almost happiness. Of course, that's what we would be in a planet of regeneration. You'll have happy trials. You're not going to go through this drama we go through all the time. It's not easy being on a planet of atonement. That's because you're ripping out these primitive emotions. Has your daughter inhabited other bodies other than that when she was your daughter? And the answer is yes, many others. Under which form are you among us here? Under my feminine form. Do you see us so distinctly as if you were alive? Yes. Since you are here under the form you had on Earth, do you see us through your eyes? No, the spirit has no eyes. I only show up under my latest form to satisfy the laws that rule the spirits when evoked and obliged to return what you call the paraspirit. So, and that's a good point. When she says the spirit has no eyes, you have the paraspirit, which gives you the appearance of just like what we are now, right? If I died right now, my paraspirit would appear to be me. Now, as I went through, a couple of weeks, and I said, "Oh, I want my hair. I like to have my hair back on my head, right? Be less gray, lose some weight, and I could form myself the way I want to form." And you would appear to be a human. But when they say the spirit has no eyes, how does that work? Well, in actuality, the core of the spirit is the spirit, right? In fact, let me bring this up here. I always forget to do this. Hold on 1 second. Let me hide this. Because this is important to show. So we are composed of the spirit, the paraspirit, and the physical body when we're on Earth. Now, when we're in the spirit world, we don't have a physical body. We have the paraspirit. That appears as a physical body. So when people have NDEs or visions, or they're first taken to heaven, they see people that look like them, and they think they look like them because they touch themselves. They go, "Oh, I got a head and I have a nose, ears, all that stuff." That's your paraspirit. But in actuality, you really are this encapsulation of logic called the spirit. And this encapsulation of logic has powers that you cannot imagine. You can create with your mind, right? Because thought is action in the spirit world. And yet you can see, you can hear, and all these are at acuteness level that's undreamed of in the physical world, right? You can move by thought. So think of yourself as this ball of logic flying through this dense database, modifying data as you go, right? Reading data as you go. And then because you've got all these, and I talk about this in my book, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, and also my other book, The Spirit Realm, Spiritism has revealed the reality of our existence. But as you get higher and higher levels in heaven, you're given more attributes. But of course, one of the basic attributes you are is that you're able to decode all the data around you, and you decode the data as a visual set, as we do with our eyes, right? As a visual set, and we see mountains and we see people and we see all this stuff. But that's because the data in the spirit universe is there, and that's what it represents. And that's how spirits can create with their mind. They will take universal fluid and they'll create the data, and they'll fashion the data to be what they want. And they'll create an environment. They'll create lakes and rivers and houses and so forth. So that gives you one clue while you're on Earth going through these hellish things, right? It's so you can get your mind. So you leave all these primitive emotions. You get rid of all this hate and envy and bad gossip, all those things, selfishness and pride. Because if you can create with your mind, do you want an uncontrolled mind out there just doing whatever it wants? No, I mean, I wouldn't give me that power. I'd give nobody on earth that power that I know of. So that's what you're here for. Okay. Let me get back to the book. But this is why these things are so interesting, because they'll give us like one sentence and they go, yeah, the spirit has no eyes, but I can still see you. So those things tell you something. It's just marvelous. Okay, can you read our thoughts? Yes, I can. I will read them if your thoughts are good. Oh, she's polite. So she's so that's a nice thing. We thank you for the explanations you kindly gave us. We acknowledge by the wisdom of your answers that you are an elevated spirit, and we hope that you may enjoy the happiness that you deserve. The answer is, I feel happy to contribute with your work. Death is happiness when no one can cooperate with progress, as I have just done. When one can cooperate with progress. Sorry. Okay, now let me go to the last one. That's not this one. Okay, moral problems, suicide for love. 7 or 8 months ago, Mr. Louis G., the shoemaker, was dating the young Victorian R., a boot stitcher with whom he was soon to marry. Hence, the marriage license was about to be issued. The couple considered themselves almost definitely united, and to save money, the shoemaker used to come to the bride's house for his meals. As usual, he came last Wednesday to have supper at the boot stitcher's house, when a silly discussion took place over something of minor importance. Both sides were very adamant, so the things heated up to a point that made Louis leave, swearing not to come back. Nevertheless, on the next day, the very confused shoemaker came to apologize. They say that sleep is a good counselor, but the lady worker, after the previous scene, and maybe foreseeing what could happen when there would be no way back, refused reconciliation, and thus neither his protest nor his cries in desperation could win her back. Nevertheless, as several days had gone by since the regrettable incident, and expecting that his beloved one would be more manageable in the evening before last, Louis wished to try a final explanation. He knocked on the door so as to be recognized, but she refused to answer. He repeated his protests and supplications to the door, but his elected one remained unaltered. You are mean, and goodbye, said the poor man. Goodbye forever. Look for a husband that loves you as much as I do. Simultaneously, the lady heard a muffled groan, then the noise of a falling body, as if just supported by the door, and then silence. She thought that Louise had just seated at her doorstep, waiting for her first coming out of the house, but she promised herself that she would not step her foot outside while he was there. A quarter of an hour had gone by when one of the residents walking through the yard with a lamp yelled for help. Soon other neighbors joined in, and Miss Victorian opened the door, screamed in horror when she saw her fiancé on the ground, pale and motionless. Everybody tried to help and seek medical support, but soon all noticed it was useless as the man had gone. The unfortunate man had stabbed his own chest with a shoemaker's knife. Now, this fact found on the CCL on April 7th gave us the idea of inquiring a superior spirit about the moral consequence of such an event. Here, the answer is given by the Spirit of St. Louis in the session of the Society on August 10th, 1858. The question, has a young lady who was the involuntary cause of her boyfriend's death any responsibility? Yes, because she did not love him. Should she have married him to avoid such a tragedy, even if not loving him? The answer is she was looking for an occasion to separate from him. She did in the beginning of the relationship what she should have done later. 3. Thus, the culpability is in the fact that she gave him hope by responding to feelings that she did not share, and that was the cause of the man's death. Yes, that is correct. Number 4, in that case, her responsibility should be proportional to the fault. That should not be as important as if she had premeditatedly provoked the death. The answer is that is obvious. Next question is, does Louis' suicide find justification in the madness that he found himself due to his obstinacy for Victorian? Yes, because the suicide is less unlawful to the eyes of God than that of a man that wants to get away from life by cowardliness. Observation. By saying that the suicide is less unlawful to the eyes of God, it evidently means that it is still criminal to a lesser degree. The fault is in his weakness that he cannot overcome, and no doubt a failed trial. Well, the spirits teach us that the merit is in victoriously fighting over the trials of all kinds that are the essence of life on earth. And I'd like to add, there's this marvelous book called Memoirs of a Suicide by Yvonne Pierre. And these suicide's never a good idea. And of course, there are exceptions. So let me say right now, there are exceptions like this guy and, like women who are driven to suicide by malevolent spirits and horrible things that are done to them, men too. But on the whole, suicides is a terrible idea. And because when you go to a lower zone for the number of years that if you committed suicide at 60 per se, and you were supposed to die at 72, well, you'd have to stay 12 years in the lower zone. Not a pleasant place to be. You're not supposed to leave your lessons early, right? It's like going to class, and instead of waiting for the full 50 minutes, or whatever it is, and you leave it 20 minutes without telling anybody, you get in trouble. Same thing. And these spirits who had committed suicide were told in this hospital for suicides, look, if you just waited a week, a month, maybe a year, things would have resolved itself. It might have resolved by death, but that would be natural death. But they would resolve themselves. This was a trial. Don't worry, you'll make it. That's why life is just like going to school with classes. You go through one class, and life's like that, right? You go to one class, you learn one subject. You got 5 minutes in between, you get to the next class, right? The next trial begins. Don't ever give up. These are just pre-planned trials that you're given to by the spirit world. The spirit of Mrs. C was evoked on another day and answered the following questions. What do you think about your action? Victorian is ungrateful. I was wrong by killing myself for her, and she did not deserve it. She did not love you then. No, in the beginning she thought so, but she was mistaken. The scene I created opened her eyes. Then she felt happy with that excuse to let me go. And you, did you sincerely love her? I was in love with her. I believe it was only that. Had I loved her with pure love, I would not have wanted to hurt her. That's very true. And that's, again, we don't own anyone. We can't be territorial. Everyone has their own life to live. Respect what people want. Even though you don't think it's good for them, you have to respect it. Question 4. Had she known that you would really kill yourself, would she have persisted in a refusal? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't believe so, since she was not mean. However, she would have been unhappy. For her, it was better that way. When you got to her door, did you have intention of killing yourself in case you were denied? No, I never thought of that. I did not think that she was so decided. It was only when I saw her stubbornness that I was overtaken by unsteadiness. It seems that you do not regret the suicide, but only because Victorian did not deserve it. Is that your feeling? As of now, yes. I am still perturbed. It still seems that I'm at her doorstep. However, I feel something I cannot define. Okay, so here he is. He's locked at her doorstep. In many suicides, unfortunately, God bless them, or locked in the cemetery with their perispirit still tied to their decomposing body. And that's very frightening to a spirit, to anybody. Because the perispirit was not, perispirit has this internal clock. Oh, I'm at age 67 or whatever it is. I'm out of here. Oh, it's 60. What's going on? But then the body, was killed and it's decomposing, but the perispirit's still there. Question 7. Will you understand later? Yes, when I am detached, which what I did was bad. See, detached. So he knows he's attached to his body and he's still locked in place right there. I should have left her in peace. I was weak and do suffer the consequences. As you see, passion leads men to blindness and to act absurdly. He only stands when it is too late. You said that you suffer the consequences. What is your punishment? And the answer is, I was wrong abbreviating my life. I should not have done that. I should have resisted instead of prematurely ending everything. That is why I am unhappy. I suffer. It is always her that makes me suffer. I feel like I'm at her doorstep. How ungrateful. Don't mention this any longer. I do not want to think anymore. Goodbye. So that is where we are today. So I hope that was an enjoyable read. It was very interesting. And all these things just, gives you little clues about the spirit world. And if you really would like to learn more about spirits and talking about eyes and all that, where we are, I would recommend my book is book 2 of Spiritism, Spirits in the Spirit Universe. Book 1 is Heaven and Below. Book 2 is Spirits in the Spirit Universe, and book 3 is How We Are Guided by Spirits. And I go in great detail of what is a spirit in this book, how a spirit learns, how a spirit progresses, what your powers of a spirit are, colleges and universities that are in the spirit world, and type of courses and things that you learn. Educate on, for many of us, like, oh no, education never ends. It goes on for eternity. And of course, why would you want it to stop if you were just sitting there in heaven thinking it was the Elysian fields and drinking your drink with the umbrella on it? That you would get tired of that. So there's always something exciting to do and be and work to have, that you want in the spirit world. And then lastly, I would recommend my book is The Spirit Realm. Spiritism has revealed the reality of our existence. And that would kind of brings everything together. Oh, I have a question here, so I better answer this. So the question is, many bodies are cremated these days. Does this change circumstances? Absolutely not. Your body is just, once your perispirit is ended and it's disconnected from your body becomes totally unimportant. So no, it does not change any circumstances at all. You no longer need your body. In fact, you're very happy to be out of your body. And you leave all that behind. Hunger, illness, all that is gone. No more anxiety. You're not going to worry about losing your job and starving. That's losing your house. That's, that phase is ended. And you may ask, okay, well, why do you have to go through all this chaos on Earth, right? Well, because being on Earth and being vulnerable in this physical body makes us more vulnerable in our character and our personality to respond to stimuli to help us transform our character and our personality for the better. That's why the Earth is this perfect simulation for us to be. So, because in heaven, it's just like the lady from Baltimore said, oh, it felt wonderful there. I can't explain my happiness. Well, if you're happy all the time, are you going to go through deep introspection and say, I got to change this flaw in my character? Some people will, absolutely. But spirits have told us, yes, you can change your character in the spirit world, especially when you're in one of the levels of heaven, but it's much more efficient in the physical world because you are just like laid bare and you've got the stimuli coming at you and you can't stop it. And that's when you'll start taking care of these character, a lot of it minor character flaws, but you'll start taking care of them when you're on Earth. That's why you have to go through this. Okay, so I hope this helps everyone. thank you for coming, being with me today on Sunday, January 30th, 2022. And remember, I do live stream this time on Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays. So please subscribe, hit the bell so you'll be notified on the next live stream. And of course, on Mondays, we have Q&A. So these are marvelous times for people to ask me questions, and ask me questions in the comment section. And I'm always notified when I get a comment. I will copy and paste and put that in my question list and get to it after the on live air questions are done. Okay. Anyway, God bless everyone and good night. God bless.